When you raise a child on your own, you do it with a kind of blind love that rarely keeps score. I was there for every scraped knee, every school recital, every teary phone call when her marriage felt like it was cracking down the middle. I took care of her children as if they were my own. No hesitation, no complaints. So when Amanda told me she and her husband were taking the kids on a once-in-a-lifetime family trip to Italy, I was genuinely happy for them. Until, of course, she added, almost like an afterthought, that they wouldn't be taking Max, their golden retriever. You don't mind keeping him, right, Mom? He loves your place anyway. No invitation, no mention of including me. Just suitcase-sized guilt and a bag of kibble dropped at my doorstep. I smiled through the call, told her I'd be fine, then hung up and stared at the leash in my hand. That night, as Max snored at the foot of my bed, I booked a ticket. Not to Rome, not to Florence, to the Maldives. Because sometimes the only way to remind your family you're not invisible is to disappear on your own terms. I raised Amanda on my own from the time she was 3. Her father left in a blur of paperwork and avoidance, leaving behind more silence than support. I didn't have the luxury of bitterness. There was a child to feed, a home to maintain, and a life to keep afloat. So I worked 2 jobs, day shifts at the clinic and weekend hours at the library, while Amanda thrived under a roof built on quiet grit. We weren't wealthy, but I made birthdays feel special, saved for every school trip, and never once let her feel the weight of what we didn't have. She grew into a bright, ambitious woman, and when she married Ethan, I smiled through my reservations and offered every bit of grace I had left. They had children quickly, 3 in under 6 years. And just like that, my title shifted from mom to grandma, with an unspoken clause that included backup babysitting, holiday hosting, and emotional buffering when her marriage strained. Still, I didn't complain. I loved my grandchildren, and truth be told, I loved being needed. It gave my quieter years meaning. But as Amanda's life expanded, mine quietly shrank. She began assuming I'd always be there, at the drop of a hat, for help, support, and errands that had long stopped sounding like favors and more like obligations. There were no birthday brunches for me, no thoughtful gestures, just a steady rhythm of being taken for granted. When she called last spring to tell me they were flying to Italy, the whole family, for 2 full weeks, I was genuinely happy for them. She deserved beauty. The children deserved memories. I asked gently, "Will you be gone over Mother's Day?" She paused. "Oh, I suppose we will be. Didn't even realize." That stung. Then came the casual line. "We'll drop Max off the day before. He'll be fine with you. He loves your backyard." No invitation. No offer to reschedule. Just an unspoken assumption that I'd fold my world around theirs once again. And in that moment, as I hung up the phone, something inside me shifted, not in anger, not in bitterness, in resolve. Max arrived the Friday before their flight. Amanda pulled into my driveway with the same causal energy she used when dropping off dry cleaning. Her SUV was crammed with luggage, booster seats, and activity kits for the kids. Max hopped out of the back with the energy of a creature who had no idea what he was being left behind from. Amanda handed me his food, a list of feeding instructions, and his favorite toy, a chewed-up stuffed elephant. She kissed my cheek briskly, already half-turned toward the car. "You're the best, Mom. I owe you one." I stood on the porch, waving as they backed out, the car packed with everything except, it seemed, consideration. Inside, Max made himself instantly at home, curling up on the living room rug with the sigh of someone who assumed all was well. And I suppose, to him, it was. But I sat on the edge of the couch with a strange tightness in my chest. Not sadness, not anger, but something colder, something more final. They were off to Tuscany, sunlight on vineyards, hand-thrown pasta in quaint little alleys, photos at sunset in matching linen, and I was dog-sitting. On Mother's Day. I poured myself a glass of wine that night and stared out the window as Max snored softly beside me. In the past, I would have made peace with it. I would have told myself that this was love. That sacrifice, once again, was just what mothers did. But it wasn't just this moment. It was the pattern. The thoughtless phone calls, the assumption that I had nothing better to do, the way Amanda had stopped asking how I was unless it concerned the kids or Max. Somewhere along the line, I had stopped being a person with a life of my own and become a utility. And I knew why. I had allowed it. The next morning, I took Max for a walk through the park, the sun warm on my shoulders. Birds chirped along the trees that bordered the trail I used to push Amanda's stroller down decades ago. It felt distant now, like a dream someone else had lived. When we returned home, I opened my laptop. I'd never done anything spontaneous in my life. Every trip I'd taken was for a reason: family, funerals, caregiving. Never once had I gone somewhere because I wanted to. I typed, solo wellness trips for women over 60. Dozens of results appeared: beachside yoga retreats, countryside bed and breakfasts, spa weeks in Sedona. But one image stopped me cold. The Maldives. Clear blue water that didn't look real. Stilted. Bungalows hovering over the sea. Hammocks swaying beneath palm fronds. It felt outrageous, indulgent, almost laughable, and absolutely necessary. By the end of the day, I had booked the flight and reserved a modest overwater suite for 5 nights. I arranged for Max to be kenneled at a local pet resort with excellent reviews. I packed light: books, linen dresses, one floppy hat I hadn't worn in years. No fanfare, no permission asked, no explanation given. I left Amanda a note on the counter. Not angry, not bitter, just honest. Max is at Ridgeview Pet Lodge. He'll be loved and well cared for. As for me, I've gone somewhere where someone will finally ask how I'm doing. Don't worry, I'll be home before you are. I signed it simply, Mom. By the time their plane landed in Florence, mine was soaring over the Indian Ocean. I didn't text to say goodbye. I didn't leave a forwarding number. For once in my life, I chose myself without guilt. The breeze in the Maldives didn't just feel like a vacation. It felt like an exhale, 30 years overdue. It took Amanda 3 days to realize I was gone. On the 4th morning of my trip, as I sipped chilled coconut water on a shaded veranda overlooking a sea so blue it felt imaginary, my phone buzzed with a string of missed calls and messages. I'd turned off notifications, but I checked them, once daily, out of courtesy, not obligation. Her first voicemail was clipped and breathless. Mom, where are you? Max isn't at the house. Are you okay? The next message was colder. I found your note. What is this? You left? During our trip? She didn't say it, but I heard it in her tone. How dare you be unavailable? I waited 2 hours before replying. I'm safe. I'm fine. Max is at Ridgeview, just like the note said. I'll be home before you land. Her response came quickly. You couldn't have just told me you didn't want to watch him? You didn't have to make some dramatic statement. I read it twice, then powered my phone off and went for a swim. The Maldives were everything I'd hoped and everything I hadn't known I needed. Time slowed. The staff greeted me by name. I napped in the middle of the day, read 3 novels, and let my skin brown in the sun without worrying if anyone needed a snack or a ride or a napkin. No one called my name. No one assumed I had nowhere better to be. And beneath all that calm, I could feel something long dormant waking up inside me. Not resentment, not even rebellion. Just me. Meanwhile, Amanda's texts shifted from irritation to confusion. I don't understand. You always said you didn't mind. Why now? Why didn't you say you felt taken for granted? That one made me pause. Because I had said it, in small ways. I'd hinted at needing rest. I'd mentioned feeling forgotten. I'd asked for dinner together, once, on my birthday. She always said, next week, or, it's been crazy around here, or, we'll make it up to you. And like so many mothers of my generation, I swallowed the hurt and smiled anyway. It wasn't her fault, not entirely. I'd trained her to believe I'd always say yes, always stay, always wait my turn. The day before I returned, she called again. This time, I answered. Hi, Amanda. There was silence, then a sigh. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything just yet, I said. Just listen. I told her where I was, what I'd been doing, how it felt to wake up to waves instead of needs. I told her I wasn't angry, I was awake, that I loved her, loved the grandkids, loved Max. But I was no longer interested in being the person everyone leaned on while no one asked if I was tired. She didn't argue. She just said softly, I think I've been selfish. I let that hang. Maybe, I replied, but I've also been silent. That stops now. We ended the call politely, not cold, not warm, just adjusting. And sometimes that's where real change begins. When I returned home, the sky was overcast and still, as if the house itself had been waiting to see what I'd do next. My suitcase bumped gently against the steps as I walked inside, the quiet strangely welcoming. Max was due back from the Sadu Pet Lodge later that afternoon, and I had exactly 4 hours of solitude to reacquaint myself with the space that had once felt like a command center. I took a slow walk through the house, touching the backs of chairs, running a hand along the windowsill, feeling the stillness settle into my bones. This wasn't the same home I'd left, or perhaps I wasn't the same woman who had walked out of it. There, on the kitchen table, sat a letter in Amanda's handwriting. No envelope, just a folded sheet of pale blue stationery with my name written across the top. Mom, I don't really know how to begin this. I read your note more times than I want to admit. I was angry at first, really angry. I felt abandoned. Then I realized that's probably how you felt for years. I've been so wrapped up in my own life that I never stopped to think how it must feel for you to always be available, always accommodating, and never ask to join. You were right to go. And I was wrong to assume you wouldn't. Love, Amanda. I sat with the letter for a long while, reading it over and over, letting it settle inside me like tea steeping in warm water. It wasn't an apology, not entirely, but it was something more honest, an awakening. Later that week, Amanda stopped by unannounced. She came alone. No kids, no Max, no frantic phone calls beforehand. Just her. She brought coffee and croissants, my favorite, though she only remembered that detail after I raised an eyebrow and she sheepishly admitted to calling the bakery to double-check. We sat on the porch, and for the first time in what felt like years, we talked, not just about schedules or the children's behavior, but about each other. I've been thinking a lot, she said, stirring sugar into her drink. About how I just expected you to always be there, and how that wasn't fair. I nodded, saying nothing, because sometimes silence says more than any clever retort. She went on, voice low. I don't want you to be the backup plan anymore. I want you to be part of the plan. That caught me. Simple words, but they landed, with weight. I leaned back in my chair, watching a pair of sparrows dart between the trees. It's not about planning, Amanda. It's about remembering I'm still living too. She nodded. That's what I mean. I forgot. That admission, so small, yet so large, was more powerful than any tearful apology, because it meant she saw me. Not just as a mother, not just as a grandmother, but as a woman who had spent a lifetime being available and had finally remembered how to choose herself. That Sunday, for the first time in years, she invited me over. No babysitting request, no hidden agenda, just lunch with her and the kids. When I arrived, the table was already set, the food thoughtfully prepared. A vase of fresh daisies sat. In the center, my favorite. Amanda leaned in to hug me and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me that love isn't measured by how much you give up, but how much you're willing to reclaim." And in that moment, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt whole. For a few weeks, things felt different. Not perfect, not dramatic, just subtly shifted in the right direction. Amanda called more often, and not just to ask for things. She asked how I was sleeping, what books I was reading, if I'd thought about planning another trip. That last question surprised me most. Not because she asked it, but because she genuinely seemed to want to know. "I think you should," she said one evening. "You seemed lighter after the Maldives, happier." I had to admit I was. Something about waking up each day with no obligations but joy had stayed with me like a scent. On the edge of memory, I wasn't chasing that feeling anymore, but I also wasn't ready to lose it. Amanda even came by with the kids on a Saturday afternoon, this time unhurried, without a question. We made lemonade. The children played in the yard while she helped. Me weed the flower beds, chatting about a new yoga class she was trying and a novel she'd finally picked up. At one point, she looked at me and said, "I don't think I ever realized how much you did until I had to imagine doing it without you." That sentence was a gift. Small, maybe, but rare. She didn't need to say more. I could see it in her. Actions. The invitations came more freely now. When a school performance came up, she asked if I'd like to attend, not to supervise, but to simply be present. She even suggested we take a weekend trip together, just the two of us, no grandkids. No dogs, no obligations. Just women, she said with a small laugh. Two women rediscovering each other. And in that suggestion, I felt something heal. Not the years that had passed without acknowledgement. Not every small hurt tucked into my silence, but something real. Something whole enough to move forward with. For the first time in a long while, I felt part of her life. Not because I was needed, but because I was wanted. And that quiet shift felt like a beginning. Peace has a fragile rhythm. It doesn't announce itself like chaos does. It settles. In quietly, and if you're not careful, you start believing it will last forever. That's the danger of hope. It blinds you to patterns that never fully break. 3 months after the Maldives and the reconciliation that followed, Amanda called on a Thursday afternoon. Her voice was rushed, but upbeat. "Hey, Mom, how are you?" I smiled, warmed by her tone. "Doing well, sweetheart. Just finished repotting my orchids." "Oh, good. Listen, Ethan and I are thinking about doing a weekend up in the mountains with the kids. Just Friday to Sunday. Thought it might be nice to unplug, let the kids explore, breathe some fresh air." I waited. "And we were wondering if Max could stay with you again, just for 2 nights. He's been so restless lately, and he loves your place." There it was. Something inside me deflated, not because she asked, but because of how she asked. So casual, so confident, as if the last 6 months hadn't changed anything, as if growth had a limit and this favor didn't count. "Max can stay at Ridgeview," I said, calm, even, clear. She hesitated. "Oh, well, yeah, I guess that's possible, but it's expensive, and you always say he's good company." "I do," I agreed, "and he is, but that doesn't mean I should be your fallback." A silence opened up between us. "I didn't mean it like that," she said, quieter now. "Didn't you?" I replied gently. "Amanda, I love helping when it's out of love, but I can feel when it's just convenient." She sighed. "It's not like I'm using you, Mom. I thought we were in a better place." "We are," I said, "which is why I'm being honest. Boundaries aren't a setback. They're how we keep what we've rebuilt." There was a pause, a long one. Then a flicker of old defensiveness slipped in. "So you're saying no? After all these years of helping, suddenly you're just Done? No, I said. I'm saying I'm done being unconsidered. Her silence on the other end wasn't angry. It was stunned. It's hard, I realized, for adult children to unlearn who they think their parents are, especially mothers who've always said yes. That night, she didn't call back. The next day, no message. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't surprised. But I was aware. This was the test. The real one. Not the forgiveness, not the trip, not even the apologies. The test was whether the respect she'd begun to show could hold under pressure. 2 days later, she sent a message. You're right. Max is at Ridgeview. I shouldn't have assumed. I'm sorry, I'll do better. That meant more to me than any bouquet or thank you note. Still, something lingered in me. Not resentment, but reflection. Even after everything, Amanda hadn't fully unlearned the habit of leaning on me first, without pause. And I hadn't yet mastered saying no without guilt. We were both still in process. That weekend, I took myself out for brunch. I brought a novel and sat near the window. No one interrupted. No one needed me. I lingered over coffee longer than I should have. Midway through a chapter, I looked up and saw an older couple seated a few tables over. The woman leaned into her partner's shoulder with a smile, whispering something that made him chuckle softly. They looked peaceful, content. I wondered briefly what my life would have looked like if I hadn't given so much of it away without boundaries. But I didn't linger on that thought. I'd made my choices, and I didn't regret them. Not really. I just wished I had remembered. Earlier, that love isn't supposed to erase you. Later that day, Amanda texted again. Can I take you to lunch next weekend? Just us. No dogs, no errands, just time. I stared at the message for a long moment. It wasn't an offer disguised as an ask. It was a true invitation. And it reminded me that change isn't one grand gesture. It's 100 small decisions, made again and again, especially when it's inconvenient. The following Saturday, Amanda arrived right on time for our lunch. She wore a soft blue cardigan I hadn't seen before, her hair pulled back neatly, face free of the usual frazzled energy. She looked younger somehow, unburdened. We chose a small cafe on the edge of town, one I'd always liked but rarely visited. It was quiet, with white linen tables and soft jazz humming in the background. Amanda insisted on paying. I didn't argue. Once we were seated, she folded her hands in front of her and took a breath. I've been thinking a lot since our last talk, she began, about how easy it is to slip back into old patterns. I nodded. That's the hardest part, Amanda. Change isn't the decision. It's what comes after. She looked down, then back at me. I didn't realize how deeply I'd come to rely on your availability, not just for help, but for permission to put myself first. Her words caught me off guard. I made you the safety net, she continued. Even when you didn't. Say yes out loud, I assumed it anyway. That wasn't fair. There it was, the honest reckoning I never expected, but always hoped for. You're still my mother, she said, but I want to know you as a woman now, too. Not someone I lean on, but someone I stand beside. That was the shift I needed. Not a perfect reversal, not a sudden transformation, but recognition. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a printed itinerary, a weekend retreat for 2 at a quiet seaside inn, everything already booked. I thought we could go somewhere just because we want to, she said. No guilt, no favors, just us. I looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time in years, I saw not just my daughter, but someone reaching back toward me with open hands. And I said yes. The weekend retreat was simple, quiet, and just what we needed. The inn overlooked a fog-kissed coastline where waves curled against the rocks in slow, deliberate rhythms. Our room had 2 small beds, thick quilts, and a view that invited reflection more than distraction. No itinerary, no performances, just space. Amanda and I fell into an easy rhythm. We walked along the shore in the mornings, shared meals without rushing, and talked more deeply than we had in years. Not about chores, not about the kids or work, but about us, who we had been, who we were still becoming. One night, sitting beneath a tangle of fairy lights on the back patio, Amanda said something I'll never forget. "I used to think your strength came from what you did for everyone else, but now I see it's from what you survived without applause." I didn't respond right away. I just let her words settle. They were true. I had survived more than she would ever know, most of it in silence. "And I don't want to be one more person who claps only when I need something," she continued. "I want to be someone who notices even when you're not performing." That was the closest thing to healing I had ever heard. The rest of the weekend passed like a slow breath. On the drive back, Amanda turned down the radio and said, "You've earned your peace, Mom. I want you to have it. And I want to protect it, not just benefit from it." When we got back to town, I didn't go straight home. I had one more stop, Ridgeview Pet Lodge. Max bounded toward me, tail wagging like a metronome. As I hugged him, I felt no resentment, just love, pure, uncomplicated. But I also knew this love would no longer be tied to expectation. When Amanda came to pick him up a week later, she brought coffee and didn't ask for anything. She just sat on the porch and told me about the new Saturday yoga class she'd joined. I told her about a local book club I was considering. It was small, this mutual sharing, but real. And in that quiet, I knew the shift was lasting. Looking back now, I realize it wasn't the trip to the Maldives that changed everything. It was the decision to take it. That quiet act of choosing myself, after decades of being everyone else's foundation, shifted something deep in the soil of my life. It's easy, almost dangerously so, for mothers to disappear inside the routines of caretaking. We do it without blinking, without complaint. We call it love, and it is. But when love comes without boundaries, it slowly stops being seen. It becomes wallpaper, always there, always assumed, never noticed. I don't blame Amanda entirely. She wasn't cruel. She was conditioned by a world that celebrates women when they give and forgets them when they don't. But something in me had grown tired of being the afterthought in my own story. And once I reclaimed even a sliver of space for myself, I saw everything more clearly. I saw how deeply I'd participated in my own invisibility. I saw how many times I said yes when what I meant was, "I'm tired." I saw how the world teaches mothers to serve endlessly, but never how to step back with grace. But I also saw something else, something beautiful. I saw that it's never too late to become visible again. Not through shouting, not through anger, but through small, deliberate acts of self-respect, through choosing peace over permission, through teaching the people we love that we are still here, not just as support, but as whole people. Amanda saw it too. Our relationship now is quieter but stronger, more balanced. She's learning to reach out, not just lean in. And I'm learning that I can be present without being depleted. It's not perfect, but it's honest. And that, more than anything, feels like the greatest gift I could have given us both. Sometimes, I sit on the porch in the early evening, a cup of tea in hand, Max at my feet, and I watch the sun sink behind the trees. It's become a ritual now, not for anyone else's benefit, just mine. A quiet moment where I remind myself, I am allowed to rest, I am allowed to matter. Amanda visits often now, but with a new awareness. She doesn't arrive in a rush with a list of needs trailing behind her. She brings herself, fully present. She asks questions. She listens. And when she leaves, she always says, "Thank you," even when I haven't done a thing. That, more than anything, tells me we've changed. Not long ago, she handed me a small leather-bound journal. Inside, she'd written a single sentence at the top of the first page. Things I've learned from my mother now that I finally saw her. It broke something open in me, something long buried beneath years of steady giving. I didn't cry. I smiled, the kind of smile that comes from deep places, because this too was part of the reward. We're still mother and daughter, but now, we're something more. Two women learning how to walk beside one another, not in the shadow of expectation, but in the light of mutual regard. I know I won't live forever. None of us will. But I also know that the legacy I leave behind won't be measured in how many school pickups I made or holidays I hosted. It will be in the moment I decided to choose myself, and how that single, quiet decision rippled out, changing not just me, but her. In the end, I didn't take the trip to get away from my family. I took it so they could learn how to truly see me. If this story spoke to something inside you, if you've ever felt overlooked, needed but not seen, know this: it's never too late to draw a boundary, to speak your truth, or to take the trip that changes everything. We tell stories like these because they reflect the quiet strength so many of us carry. If you believe in honoring those stories, please like, follow, and share. It helps this space stay open for voices that deserve to be heard. And if you're waiting for permission to reclaim yourself, consider this it. You are not invisible. You are still becoming.